as you look through that slide, there are 7 billion humans on Earth. We generate about 250 million tons of garbage, and that's just in the United States, and that's per year. And then next bullet is about 1 million plastic bags are used, but that's not every year or every month or even every day. That is actually a statistic for every minute. We are using about 1 million plastic bags. There's 18.2 trillion pounds of plastic that has been produced, and that is still pretty much all out there in one form or another. Another interesting statistic, the average person holds on to a piece of trash for about 12 paces, about 12 steps. If they can't find a dumpster, a trash can to throw that away, then they are getting lazy and just throwing that on the ground. Litter costs the United States about $11.5 billion annually. That's usually along roadways and highways, sending people out there to pick up other people's garbage. 35 million tons of food is wasted in the United States. I kind of mentioned already, that's a lot of food waste. And in 2015, the world threw away 450 billion worth in clothing, which is another item that is recyclable, just not in your curbside recycling. We'll talk about it in a little bit. So the question is why? Why do we want to recycle? You know, it is a lot of work, a lot of effort, but it does have a lot of good benefits. One being a safe space in our landfill. The landfill here in Toledo is estimated to have about 40 to 60 more years worth of life in it before it's all the way full. Then we have to go ahead and find a new place to send all of our garbage to. So the landfill really is a resource that we want to keep around as long as possible. And the way to do that is send less stuff there. So we want to recycle more, compost more, reduce. Everybody learned the reduce, reuse, recycle probably in grade school, and they're kind of in that order for a reason. We want to reduce first, reduce all the plastic we're using, reuse what we can, and then recycle last. Also, recycling uses less natural resources, wood, minerals, water. Making new things, a new pop can, a new plastic water bottle, uses a lot of natural resources. Recycling does not use as much of those resources. Also making new things creates a lot of pollution. Recycling creates less pollution when you're reusing those things and making them recycled instead of brand new. Saves energy. And then also has economic benefits and local economic benefits. If we're recycling all of our plastic here locally, we don't have to rely on other countries to provide us oil to create new plastic. So let's go through some of the easy stuff first as far as recycling goes. The things that we should be putting in our recycling containers. So the first one is, yes, recycle your bottles, your jars, your cans. And we want them clean, so we want to rinse them out first and shake out the excess water. We don't want a lot of drops of water in there, but they don't have to be entirely dry. Just shake out the drops. And then if it has a lid or a cap, put the lid or cap back on again. Now, I do get a lot of people who say, I don't want to recycle my peanut butter jars and my spaghetti sauce jars because they're too much work to clean out. And the thing is, they don't have to be pristine. I do this presentation sometimes, and people say they run their recyclables through the dishwasher, and that's a little bit excessive. They don't have to be sparkling clean. And if they've got a smudge of peanut butter or some crusted spaghetti sauce around the top, that is okay. We can handle some food residue. If it's got 3 inches of spaghetti sauce in the bottom of it, then we have a problem. That's food contamination. So rinse it out. And the other question I get a lot is why caps and lids? Why do they go back on? And the answer really there is, this is your typical recycling facility. It is all very automated and lots of machinery. A single cap by itself gets into this system and gets in the wrong spot. It doesn't get sorted into the right location. Actually, if you toured a facility like this, as you walk up and down the aisles, they're just lined with water bottle caps because they hit this machinery and they get thrown around. They can be recycled, they just have to be on something. So if a plastic lid is on a plastic water bottle, it will get recycled. But the same thing goes for mixed containers too. So like a pickle jar, a glass jar with a metal lid, they still want the lid back on. There's a process for getting the metal out of the glass later. If it's a juice carton, a carton with a plastic lid, again, still always just put the lids back on again. The rule of thumb kind of is if it is smaller than a credit card, it is usually not recyclable. My wife actually tries to recycle her little Splenda packets from her coffee in the morning. That's going to hit this machinery and just blow around and not end up in the right spot. So if it is smaller than a credit card, put it in the garbage unless you can put it back on something like a water bottle. Next, we've got paper cardboard. Yes, definitely recycle your paper and your cardboard. We just talked about how a little bit of food residue on your plastic or your aluminum or your glass is okay. The same thing is not the same for paper or cardboard. Paper and cardboard is a fiber. It likes to absorb things, and once it absorbs something, you can't get it back out again. So as soon as you get food waste or oil or chemicals on your paper or your cardboard, it is contaminated and it does need to be put in the garbage, not in the recycling. The big example there is pizza boxes. The bottom is always covered in oil. Even if they put an extra cardboard liner in it, that just gives you extra cardboard to throw away because the oil still goes through the liner and gets into the pizza box. If the top is clean though, you can always rip the top off and still recycle the top, but not the bottom. This is something I'll kind of copy and paste and throw in the chat for you to grab because we talked about reduce, reuse, recycle in that order. And there are a lot of ways to reduce how much paper you're going through, is specifically your junk mail. So there's a few websites here that people like to log into, and you can opt out of a lot of the junk mail. Phone books. Why do we even get phone books? Nobody uses phone books anymore. I had one show up on my porch not too long ago and was able to opt out of it because we're not going to ever open that up. Same thing with if you get the blue bag from the Toledo Blade with the ads in it on Sunday and you don't want that, you can email them and get that to stop showing up at your house. So like I said, I will throw this in the chat towards the end. That way, if you want those websites, you can grab them. Moving on, we've got cartons. We already mentioned them. Again, rinse them out, shake out the water, put the lid or the cap back on. One thing I do like to mention with cartons is if you are using a Lucas County drop-off location instead of your curbside, and you do have to put these in with other containers. So you put them in with the plastic, the aluminum, and the glass. Sometimes people get a little confused and put them in with the paper and cardboard. They do kind of seem like a paper or cardboard product since it's a carton, but because of how they're made, they need to go in with the other plastic and glass containers. And then there's plastic. Yes, for sure. Recycle your plastic. Same theme as before, rinse them out, shake out the water, put the caps and lids back on. The nice thing about the Toledo area is most of us are using Republic Services as your recycler. So if you live in the city of Toledo or even Maumee, Sylvania, Perrysburg, everybody pretty much uses Republic Services, and they are right now taking all plastics with a recycling symbol on them. So inside that recycling symbol for plastic, you're going to find a recycling number 1 through 7, and Republic right now is taking all 1 through 7. So just make sure you find that recycling symbol, then you can recycle it. Focus on 1s and 2s is what I usually tell people. Those two numbers are recyclable over and over and over again. Once you get into 3s and 6s, they get a lot harder to recycle. Same things with 4s and 5s and 7s. A lot of times it's not really a recycle on some of those items. It's more of a down cycle where you're taking those items. You can't really recycle it into a plastic water bottle again, but you can shred it up and smush it together and make a park bench or a kid's toy that's that hard plastic, which is still a good reuse, but then it's stuck as that thing forever. So again, reduce your plastic. Recycling's been around for a long time, works fantastic for paper and cardboard, glass and aluminum. It's not really the answer for plastic, it's just helpful for plastic. What we really need to do is reduce our plastic, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So it seems simple. There's easy things to recycle. Focus on your glass, your aluminum, your plastic, your paper and cardboard. But what we find is there is a lot of contamination in our recycling. Part of that is we're just making a lot more stuff, and a lot more stuff means there's a lot more variety of things. And sometimes it gets harder to decide what's recyclable and what's not. This graph kind of shows that pretty much every category of thing that we could make, we are making more of it and throwing more and more of it away. And I think the problem with recycling comes down to three different categories. The first one being single stream recycling. And when recycling first started back in the day, maybe some of you remember back in the day, recycling was hard, but you had to be intentional about it and you did it correctly. And what that looked like is in your garage, you probably had 3 or 4 bins. One was for paper and cardboard, one was for glass, one was for aluminum, and so on. And the bins weren't big, so everything was compacted. The bins didn't have lids on them, so everything was nice and clean. But that's not really what recycling looks like anymore. Gone are our clean and organized bins, and in their place, pretty much this recycling tote, which a lot of people just see as a dumpster for hopefully all their recyclables, but we also see people throwing the wrong thing in there. The next thing is what we call wish cycling. Wish cycling usually revolves around plastic. Like a kid's toy or a coat hanger or even a bucket. Those are plastic. I really wish they were recyclable, but they are not. They're more of a rigid plastic, a hard plastic. You cannot recycle them in your curbside recycling. If you put them in there and just wish that they get recycled, hope that they get recycled, that's not how it works. They're causing problems down the line. And then the last one is confusion. Like I mentioned, there's just a lot of stuff out there right now. So what is recyclable, what is not? We'll get into some of those harder things in a few minutes. But how are we doing locally? Well, in 2016, our recycling contamination was at 44%. And I think that's pretty close to 50 to say almost half of what everybody was trying to recycle. And that's pretty much throughout all of Lucas County because it all gets mixed together, whether you live in Maumee or Perrysburg or City of Toledo, it all goes to the same location. And we were finding that about half of everything that was there was actually garbage. And at that point, the people that were taking our recyclables actually called us up and said, we don't even want your recyclables anymore, Toledo and Lucas County, because they are too contaminated. They're just taking too much time and effort to sort through because the recycling industry is an industry. It wants to be profitable, and we want it to be profitable. The more money it makes, the more things they're going to recycle. And they were just spending too much time sorting through our garbage. So it was a bit of an eye-opener at that time. In 2016, we had then lots of educational campaigns and press conferences and mailers that went out to try to educate people on how to recycle correctly. The city of Toledo also hired inspectors to start going around and opening up people's bins and looking for contamination, and they were giving little what we called oops cards that said, hey, oops, you've got some contamination in there, and letting people know what that was. We actually found when we went back to those same neighborhoods that the inspectors went through, when we went back, there was a pretty drastic reduction in contamination. People wanted to do the right thing. They just needed that extra education. So from 2016 to 17, we actually saw about a 10% reduction in contamination. And we've seen a few more percentages each year of that contamination continuing to come down. Problem with contamination is all of our recyclables go really far across the state of Ohio before they get sorted into here's a pile of glass, here's a pile of aluminum, here's a pile of paper, and then out to get recycled. So, we can see us here in Toledo, and the red dot is actually our landfill. And what happens is all of our recyclables end up going all the way over to Oberlin, which is east of Sandusky, and some of our paper and cardboard actually makes it all the way to Cleveland before it actually starts to get processed and recycled. So if we've got 44% contamination in our recycling, that's also 44% garbage that we're now just driving across the state of Ohio, which is very expensive and not environmentally friendly. So the more we can just clean up our recycling here in Toledo and throughout the rest of Lucas County, the better it is for everybody. So here's my will it recycle, the questions that people have for me often. And I won't make you all turn on your cameras and do a poll, which I've done for other groups throughout the pandemic, as we've been doing a lot of virtual programming. But here's what people have questions on. We already talked about toys, coat hangers, other rigid plastics. For some reason, we see a lot of hoses in our recycling. That's not even a plastic item. All of those not recyclable. If it is donatable, go ahead and try donating it first. But again, don't put it in your recycling, throw it away. Styrofoam. Styrofoam is not recyclable locally, not recyclable in Toledo or Lucas County. The closest location that has a year-round drop-off for styrofoam, if you wanted to get it recycled, is up in Ann Arbor. So if you ever head that way, go ahead and pack up your car with styrofoam and take it up to their drop-off location. Occasionally here in Toledo, we keep Toledo Lucas County Beautiful. We'll do collections. Last year we started doing them after the holiday season because a lot of people have packaging styrofoam to get rid of after the holidays, which we'll continue to kind of do. We just had one a few weeks ago. And then we get it to a specialized processor, but it is not recyclable in a county drop-off location or your curbside. Here's a lot of things that we see kids taking to schools in their lunches. School lunchrooms create a lot of waste, and pretty much none of it is recyclable. None of these items can go in a recycling bin. Now there is a program out there called TerraCycle, which is a company. TerraCycle is a company that specializes in recycling hard to recycle items. They actually have a program for all of these, the solo cups, the chip bags, the juice pouches, and a lot of other things. They take toothbrushes and disposable razors and all sorts of stuff. So if you really want to look into reducing your impact and reducing your waste, look into TerraCycle. The Toledo Zoo actually has a good partnership with them. They collect a lot of these items at the zoo. You can drop them off. They've got a big bin right there off of the Anthony Wayne Trail parking lot. And TerraCycle actually sees a value in some of these items, and they're able to give a little bit of a kickback to the zoo, and they use that to as a fundraiser for their Zoo Teen program. So again, look into the zoo and their program, as well as check out the TerraCycle website. We're actually partnering with them right now to collect candy wrappers from Halloween, and then we mail those into TerraCycle for recycling. Here's hazardous waste. Obviously, it's hazardous waste. You can't recycle it in your regular curbside recycling. But it's hazardous. We don't want that in the landfill either. So what do you do with it? There are a few options for you. Year round, you can call up the Lucas County Solid Waste Department, and they will schedule an appointment, and you can take it to them if you're in Lucas County. The City of Toledo also has a program that runs all summer called Engage Toledo, and they also take back all hazardous waste at those locations, and those locations kind of bounce around the City of Toledo, getting into different communities, so everybody has the option to get rid of these items. I do want to mention though that your compact fluorescent light bulbs, the little squiggly light bulbs, and rechargeable batteries and the compact fluorescent light bulbs are hazardous waste, shouldn't go in your garbage, but are easier to recycle because you can take them back to a number of different home improvement stores, Menards for sure, a number of Lowe's and Home Depots also have locations at the front near the customer service to dispose of rechargeable batteries and the compact fluorescents. Also, Bulb Plus Battery is a local store that takes them back and recycles them. So look into some of those options as well. Electronics, definitely a recyclable item, not in your curbside, not at a county drop-off location, but there's a lot of important good stuff inside your electronics that we want to get recycled, not to the landfill. So you need to contact a electronics recycler. Again, the county solid waste department that takes the electronics back, but also AIM E-Cycling and AccuShred and a couple others around town are all good options as well. The hard one in the past has always been the old TVs, the tube TVs, because they are actually hazardous waste as well and very difficult to recycle. And the Engage Toledo program just started taking those back for free, and the county program started taking those back at 50 cents a pound. So if you do have one of these sitting in your basement, which is where most of them are, because nobody actually watches TV on these dinosaurs anymore, right? You can now find a way to get it recycled. Textiles, clothing, yes, for sure, it's recyclable, but not in your curbside recycling, not at a drop-off location. Best way to recycle these items is take them to a place where you can donate them. Donate them first, and donate them even if you know they're not resellable. So if it's got a stain or a rip, still take that back to your Goodwill, your Salvation Army, your Easter Seals, and they will actually, if they can't resell it, and reselling is better, reusing is better than recycling, but if they cannot resell it, they will package all that up and they send it off to a textile recycler to get turned into carpet or rags or some such thing. So focus on those big three organizations, your Goodwill, Salvation Army, Easter Seals. Don't trust the random box at the gas station that says donate clothes here, because we don't really know what happens to those afterwards. This is a tough one, right? You've got your shredded paper, a receipt, and a kid's TV dinner. So all of these are difficult to recycle. The only one you actually can recycle is the shredded paper. You cannot put it in your curbside recycling. The only way to recycle shredded paper is to put it in a brown paper bag and take it to a county drop-off location and put it in with that paper there. So they don't want it curbside, but you can take it to a drop-off location. Just make sure it's in a brown paper bag. Your freezer meals. Yeah, so what's going on there? A lot of times freezer boxes will get coated in plastic, and that plastic coating is there to keep your freezer food from getting freezer burnt, but it also makes it impossible to recycle the box. And what I tell people to do is scratch it, with your fingernail, and if you get like a plastic film off under your fingernail, it does have plastic on it, and just throw it in the garbage. Don't recycle it. But that's really just your freezer. People tell me, oh, like my milk jug has a film on it. Well, that's more of a wax film, and that's okay. We can recycle that. Just focus on that freezer box and see if it's got the film on it. Chances are it's plastic then. And then receipts. Receipts are bad. If anybody ever asks, hey, would you like a receipt with that? The answer is no, because they have a lot of chemicals on them, a lot of carcinogens. You shouldn't even touch receipts. And we don't want that to be recycled into, kids' construction paper and still have all those chemicals on it. So just throw those in the garbage when you get them. Junk mail we talked about. Try to get rid of it first. No one uses a phone book. But it is all recyclable, even if it's got like a plastic little window on it, whatever. Still just throw it in the recycling bin for sure. This one confuses me a little bit. Here's some sticks and some leaves and some grass, and I understand that paper and cardboard is made out of wood, but that does not mean that you can recycle leaves and sticks. And we see this a lot in the recycling bins around Lucas County, people trying to throw sticks and leaves in their recycling bins. Those things are compostable. They are not recyclable, completely different. If you can, just mow them back into your yard. It's healthy for your grass. Or at this time of year, just about every community is getting their leaves picked up, or will soon be getting their leaves picked up. So just rake it all to the curb and wait for that to happen. Don't try to put it in your recycling bin. This one I like to add because everybody has a recycling bin in their kitchen, but your bathrooms create a lot of recyclables. Just about every shampoo, conditioner, body soap, even the hand soap that you're next to your sink, those containers are all recyclable. Just look for the recycling symbol on them, rinse them out. If it's from your laundry room, that's another room I like to focus on, because all of your laundry detergent containers are probably recyclable. It's going to fill up your sink with bubbles, but that's okay. Still rinse it out a couple times, and then it's ready to be recycled. And the only time I tell people don't recycle the cap, don't put the cap back on, is if it is like a hand soap, that's got a pump action lid on it. That lid you can throw away because it probably has springs and metal and some other components in it. But everything else, put the lid back on, recycle it. Oh, the face mask, obviously a recent addition to the presentation. Are face masks recyclable? Absolutely not. And who hasn't gone to Kroger or Walmart or any other location and not seen face masks at this point blowing across the parking lot? They are a huge issue with litter. So if you're using single-use face masks like this one, please just make sure that they end up in the garbage. And if you can, switch over to a reusable option instead. And then plastic bags. Let's talk about plastic bags. Plastic bags are not recyclable in your curbside recycling or at drop-off locations. If you remember back to that slide where I had the sorting facility and all the machinery, if you throw your plastic bags in the recycling, they hit the machinery and they actually get tangled up in the machines. You have to shut down the recycling facility. Workers have to go in and rip out all the plastic film, which is actually an unsafe position for them to be in, and it causes lots of problems. Don't recycle your plastic bags, and also don't bag your recyclables. If you've got all your recyclables and you throw them in a plastic bag and you tie that plastic bag up with a nice little bow on top and you throw that in your recycling bin, well, now all of your recyclables are trapped inside that bag. So you've got some aluminum, some glass, some plastic all in there, maybe even some paper. And when it gets to the recycling facility, all those machines are trying to sort that stuff, and they can't because it's trapped in a plastic bag. And a worker there is going to see that, and they're not going to have the time or ability to open that up and see what's inside. So it'll get snagged and go in the pile that goes back to the landfill. So make sure your recyclables are loose. If they're in a plastic bag, just shake out the plastic bag into your recycling container. So what do you do with plastic bags then? Well, you can recycle them. You just have to take them back to the grocery store. Just about every grocery store out there has a place in the front for plastic film, and it is all plastic film, not just plastic bags. So it is any plastic film that has a stretch to it. If you can stretch it a little bit, take it back with your plastic bags. So that includes produce bags and dry cleaning bags, bubble wrap. A lot of your Amazon envelopes now have a little recycling symbol on them that says store drop off. Well, store drop off means throw it in with your plastic bags and take it back. Even like the case around plastic water bottles. My dog food comes in a plastic bag that's a little bit thicker, but it's still recyclable. It all goes back to the same location at the grocery store. I've got about 12:40 here on as far as the time frame goes. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit and talk a little bit more about plastic, and then we'll see if anybody has any questions. And why do I like to pick on plastic? Well, because it deserves to be picked on. And this slide shows that way back in the 1960s and 70s, there was not a lot of plastic out there, but somewhere around the 80s, 90s, we decided as a a society, as a world even, that plastic was amazing. We should wrap everything in plastic and make everything out of plastic. And the amount of plastic we were making just skyrocketed. There was a study done not too long ago out of the university in Pennsylvania that wanted to figure out where it was all going. We're making all of this plastic now. What's happening to it? And they found that about 50% was going to the landfill, which is high. I mean, some plastic is unrecyclable, so it has to go to the landfill, but we'd like to see more of that get recycled. Less than 10% was actually being recycled, and then they just said the rest was unaccounted for. Well, the rest is a fair amount more. I mean, the landfill and the recycling only accounts for just about 60%. So what happened to the rest? Well, we all know now probably where that rest went to, and that's out into our oceans. And it's hard to go on social media or even watch the news and not see the problems that the plastic is producing out here in our oceans. It's got these big currents out there, and it kind of pushes stuff into the middle. And once plastic gets into the middle of these currents, it just sits there. You know, if it's a napkin, even glass or aluminum, it's all going to decompose. Glass and aluminum obviously takes a very long time to decompose, but it will eventually turn back into nutrients. But that doesn't really happen with plastic. Plastic doesn't decompose back into nutrients. It just becomes smaller and smaller pieces of plastic, which is where we get the term microplastics from. And we focus on the oceans because we hear about whales digesting plastic and eating it. We hear about birds along the ocean getting trapped in plastic, or turtles, you know, that have an issue with straws. But it is every single body of water that is collecting plastic right now. So here's our Great Lakes up in Lake Superior. There's about 7,000 particles of plastic per kilometer squared. But as you get down into Lake Erie, that number is much, much higher. Over in Lake Ontario, if you're a fisher person, don't eat any fish out of Lake Ontario. And from Lake Ontario, it obviously all just goes out into the ocean, causing more problems out there. And as I mentioned, microplastics are an issue. So here's my plastic bag that gets out into the ocean. It's going to get hit by waves, and it's going to get some UV light on it, which makes it brittle, makes it fall apart easier, but it is just falling apart into smaller pieces of plastic. That plastic gets into the food stream for the fish. Fish eat it. We eventually eat the fish. When I do this for high school students, somebody always says, well, you know, I don't like red lobster. I don't eat fish. But it's not just fish that we get from the ocean. We also get, here's a study that was done on sea salt in the United States. And if you're eating the average amount of salt, then you're getting about 180 particles of plastic per year. There was a study done not too long ago in the Great Lakes area on the production of beer and how much plastic was in beer. And I was kind of hoping that this would convince adults to stop littering. And when we showed that there was quite a few particles of plastic out there in beer, 520 particles you're consuming if you're the average American drinking beer. But look at the tap water. Tap water is something you actually need, and you're getting a huge amount of plastic in your tap water. Now, big business saw this and they said, you know what you should do instead of drink tap water? You should drink bottled water instead, which makes no sense at all. But they had to do another study then and figure out how much plastic was in bottled water, and they found that it's in pretty much every single bottled water out there. They actually even found that the action of breaking the seal and opening the cap for the first time causes enough friction that microplastics are falling into your water, and then you're drinking it. And some of those particles are bigger than 100 microns, which is about the width of a human hair. And they're in there, you can't really see them. But they're finding that these smaller ones are an even bigger issue because they're so small that when you drink them, they don't just go through your digestive system. They actually small enough to get into your bloodstream and get deposited throughout your body and in all of your major organs. And we're just now trying to figure out what that is doing to people. Right now, the statistic out there is that we are consuming about a credit card's worth of plastic every week, and that's through our food, water, and sometimes even the air that we're breathing. So what are we going to do? Well, we already talked about it is reducing, reusing, recycling, and there's lots of ways to reduce. Try to avoid excess packaging. Your onion doesn't need to be in a plastic bag when you go to the grocery store. It has a pretty good skin on it. And if you are at the grocery store, just about every grocery store is now letting you bring your own reusable bags again. That kind of went away a little bit during COVID, but all those grocery stores are now letting you do that again. Pack a reusable container for your lunches, and if you can avoid plastic containers. Just because it says microwave safe, that means it's not going to melt in the microwave. But every time you heat up food in a plastic container, you're getting plastic chemicals in your food. So avoid plastic containers. Straws, don't use those. Disposable cutlery, sure. Have a home cooked meal. That sounds nice, but really, what that means is a lot of the litter and a lot of the waste that we see out there in the world is coming from the fast food industry and the take-home food industry. So the more we can cut down on our waste, the better. Composting, I think, is like the next thing once we get recycling figured out, which we still have a long way to go, but we do need to compost better. And we can compost some things that we can't recycle. So your pizza box is compostable. Now they now make disposable cutlery that is compostable. So some good options there to continue to reduce our impact. And there's other good R words out there. I like repair. We used to repair things. If your jeans got a rip in them, we would sew them back up and keep wearing them. If your TV broke or your refrigerator broke, we would repair it instead of replacing it. Now we don't even wait for things to break before we're throwing them away and getting the next new TV or cell phone or tablet or pair of jeans. So some of that needs to come back. Refuse, that's kind of your single-use plastics. Rot, that's your composting. So other good R words out there. Here's some information about us. If you ever needed to ask us any questions, we are here to help people recycle better and get rid of those items that are hard to dispose of properly. If you don't follow us on Facebook, I recommend that you do, because we always share good information and locations to recycle things. And we are just a small organization, a nonprofit organization, so you can also donate to us if you would like.